Hakuho listeners, let's learn sumo. I'm Clayton. Welcome to the podcast. I know it's been a few weeks. I'm still dealing with a few family issues, and hopefully that will start to settle down shortly. Let's get into it. Unfortunately, not good news tonight. We're dealing with a scandal in sumo at the moment, and you may have heard a little bit of rumour going around and some articles on Twitter of late about Megashira 8 Hokuseiho. Hokuseiho sits in the Miyagino Beya or stable run by Yokozuna legend Hakuho. We'll get to that in a moment. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Join me on Instagram and Twitter at Let's Learn Sumo, where we'll do little short podcasts in the middle, trying to learn little bits and pieces about sumo. And then during the tournaments, we'll go in a bit more depth. So, scandals. Look, sumo, like any sport, has scandals from time to time, issues. If you've seen the Netflix drama, fictionalised drama called Sanctuary, you might see a little bit of violence, a bit of bullying, things like that. Look, you know, the history and culture of sumo, it's a very rank-based system, a lot of Japanese culture involved there over many hundreds and hundreds of years, and violence in combat sports is a natural part of that life, but the bullying and violence that sometimes goes on in the sumo world behind the scenes has been something that's plagued sumo for quite a while. And it's certainly reared its head again here. Certainly back in the early 2000s, there was a big scandal around throwing matches and fixed matches back in that time, and they brought in some new rules about sumo not trying hard enough to try and stamp down on that sort of behaviour. Certainly, as we've talked about, sumo eat and drink a lot to get their weight up, and beer is a big part of their life to add calories to their weight. Unfortunately, some sumo do get addicted to alcohol, and that creates a bit of drunken behaviour. Certainly that brought about some rumours about why Ichinojo retired and had such a poor relationship with his beya after retirement. You may have seen Ichinojo, who was a sekiwake and one time ozeki, had retired and had his hair cutting ceremony recently, and his oyakata and no one from his stable turned up. There were some rumours about some alcoholic behaviour and some violence at that time. Well, unfortunately, a new scandal has come about with our Megashira 8 Hokuseiho, our one-armed bandit who likes to lean on people, and the beya, recently taken over by Yokozuna legend Hakuho. Now, if you don't know, Hakuho is what is a Yokozuna. He retired in 2021. He had over 1,100 wins in Makuuchi, and he won an incredible record, 45 titles over his more than 20-year career, I think it was. It was a very long career anyway, and 45 titles, it easily doubles the next closest Yokozuna. So when he retired in 2021, he eventually took over the Miyagino Beya in 2022 after Chikobayama, who was the oyakata there, the stable master. He age retired. They forcibly age retired the oyakata at age 65. So Hakuho, being a legend of the sport, decided he wanted to go into looking after a stable. And he took over, and there's obviously deals made for him to take over that beya. And one of his students that his protégés, he's been trying to bring along since high school days was Hokuseiho. Hokuseiho's full shikona is Hokuseiho Osuma. Now, Hokuseiho has only been around for a short time, and you may have heard some people talking about his style and how they don't like his style. He tends to use his 204 centimetre, 180 kilogram frame to his advantage, and leaning on, getting a yotsu grip and holding on and wearing out his opponents, using his height and weight to force them into exhaustion. And taking them out. Now, bear in mind, he's only done 23 tournaments. He's got a record of 134 wins, 72 losses, 44 absences. But in Makuuchi, in the top division, he's only done 6 basho. So he's 41-40 record with 6 absences. His highest has been Megashira 6. Now, last year he had a couple of good tournaments. July was a good tournament, September not so good. And he's kind of, I think people are finding out about his technique, but undoubtedly he's came through the lower divisions. He won all of those lower divisions: Jonakuchi, Jonadan, Sandanmei, and Makushita. However, he didn't win Juryo before he was promoted to Makuchi in about, I think, 2022. He got promoted to Makuchi division. Now, Hokuseiho, it might actually say he was born in Hokkaido, but he actually was born in Mongolia. His real name is Ariuna Davanij. Sorry, my pronunciation of Mongolian is very poor. But he has been here since a very young child, so he does have Japanese citizenship. Now, you may remember his last most notable match was the lengthy match in November against Midori Fuji. That match went for 6 minutes and 40 seconds, and there was a very rare Mizu Iri, a water break in between that match at 4 minutes. And Midori Fuji tried everything to win that match, and Hokuseiho basically leaned on him for 6 minutes and 40 seconds until he took him out. Now, unfortunately, you may remember in January tournament, just recently, Hokuseiho left the tournament after day 5. He went out injured, claiming that he had a sore knee and that he had a meniscus injury which required surgery. Now, at that time, there were obviously some rumours about it being a disciplinary matter more than an actual injury. So this week it's all kind of exploded. The JSA the compliance committee held a disciplinary hearing, and there's allegations that Hokuseiho has been bullying and taking multiple violent actions and assaults against other junior Bayer members, and that some of those members have even complained quite strongly to Hakuho as the Oyakata. Unfortunately, there's also allegations that Hokuseiho was stealing money from his stablemates while they were practicing, taking it from their wallets. So, fairly serious allegations. Certainly the dishonesty allegations are quite serious. The hearing yesterday, Hokuseiho and Hakuho, I don't know that Hokuseiho appeared, but certainly Hakuho did. And there were statements from other Rishiki from that Bayer, and at this time it appears that there was some acceptance of those charges by Hakuho, and whilst the allegations at this stage in public are fairly limited, it certainly generated enough complaints from his stablemates, and over the time there was no action taken. Well, it's all exploded now, and the compliance committee have had a very good look at it. And unfortunately, at this time, it appears that they have recommended that Hokuseiho is to retire. Now, remember, Hokuseiho is only at the beginning of his career. He's only 22. They've also said that Hakuho is to be demoted 2 ranks to the lowest Oyakata rank, which will probably stop him from being promoted to a shimpan, a judge in the JSA. Now, why is this so unusual? Well, the JSA over many years has tried to, I wouldn't say cover up, but at least not publicise its scandals. It likes to deal with its scandals in-house and take its own actions, but with the advent of social media and more publicity, those scandals tend to be a little bit more public. And so obviously I think they've been maybe not forced into it, but certainly they're trying to change the culture a little bit. Now, for this to be such a public action, and including a public action against the great Yokozuna Hakuho, shows the depth of actions that they were forced to take in the face of many complaints. So Hokuseiho, well, look, does he need to be forcibly retired, and if not, fired or sacked from sumo, or will we find that he just gets suspended for a period of time? Look, I would think it'd be quite a shame if he was forcibly retired or sacked at this stage. It is a first offence, and yes, it is quite serious. If you look at Asanayama, he was given a full year suspension for breaching COVID rules. So there's certainly precedent for suspending sumo for lengthy periods of time, and they fall a long way down the bunsuke. He would likely fall down to Jonadan or Jonakuchi if he was suspended for over a year or so. I think for someone so young, my personal opinion would be that you need to maybe intervene, and if he's stealing money and it's, the allegation is it's been happening since high school, it's something that's happened for a very long time, that to me probably presents more of a mental health issue in terms of why he's doing it, and perhaps some intervention there might bring that out. Look, it's certainly a very difficult thing to do when you take action against somebody. Do I think they will probably retire him? Yes, I think they will. All the evidence so far and all the rumours so far point to him retiring and slinking off into the distance. I think that's a shame. I think maybe some intervention and give him a chance after a lengthy suspension, and maybe try and integrate him back. But that's a difficult thing to do, particularly with the dishonesty thing. That's a very difficult thing to do with someone in that situation. The trust is quite a difficult thing to get back when you lose it. So how will it change sumo? Well, I actually think this will change sumo quite dramatically, and the culture will change on the basis, maybe not because of Hokuseiho, and it is certainly very public now, and it is, I would say, almost international. You don't normally ever read of sumo in Australia, but our news limited site, which is one of the Murdoch papers, actually had an online story about this scandal, which to me was quite shocking. I've never seen a sumo matter make a news limited story in Australia. So certainly it's spread internationally, and you may see it in other news. So do I think this will change the culture in sumo? Yes, I do, because Hakuho, being such a senior and legend of the sport, for him to be punished in such a way so publicly indicates that the JSA take this extremely seriously, and they really want the culture to change, and they look at the oyakata of these bayers as people who should be responsible for their charges, their rashiki. Now, certainly Hakuho is very new to the sport, to the oyakata being only in charge for a bit over a year, and perhaps he hasn't paid as much attention. He does have his eyes on a lot of other things and tournaments and things like that. And he's trying to train his charges at the bayer, at the stable, but perhaps he needed a bit more time to work on disciplinary issues and keeping the peace within his stable and ensuring that everyone is doing the right thing, and that's where he's taken his eye off the ball. For him to be punished so publicly and demoted so publicly, the most celebrated Yokozuna of all time, it shows the other oyakata and the other rashiki that no one is protected regardless of their rank of or standing in sumo and the JSA, and that those type of actions can have a significant bearing on your career. And those sort of public actions lead to change of culture, change of behaviour. And I hope that that's the case. I do hope that if any good comes out of this is that there is a change of behaviour, a change of culture within sumo, and certainly within the oyakatas, paying more attention to what their young men are doing. And they are, you've got to remember, most of these sumo are quite young men. They're in their 20s. Some of them are in their teens. If you look at some of the guys in Jonadan and Jonakuchi, those young men are, usually around 16 to 18 years of age, very impressionable, and there's a deep responsibility on the oyakatas to shape their behaviour, to shape their culture, to integrate them into the sport. They do go to sumo school to learn about it, but it is the oyakata's responsibility and the senior sumo in those bayers to ensure that their culture is a healthy culture, not a bad culture. And that's where Hakuho has failed, and certainly where Hokuseiho has failed as a senior sumo within his bayer, as a Megashira sumo. That's a fairly serious failing for him as well. So hopefully things will change in culture. I hope that the rumour that he's being forcibly retired is perhaps just that, a rumour, and that they maybe intervene as a young man and try and change his behaviour, a lengthy suspension, some intervention with psychologists or things like that to try and change his outlook and reintegrate him into sumo. As I've said, I'm not a big fan of his type of sumo, but, he's very young in the sport and has time to change the way he does his sumo, and he's made it to Magashira because he's been successful. So I would hope that maybe he'll get another chance, but the rumours are such that we may not see Hokuseiho on the dojo again, which to me is quite sad when someone that young is retired. So hopefully that's not the case, and we'll see him again maybe in a year or two, and he changes his ways. Hakuho, look, if he doesn't make Shimpan, that would be a big loss to the JSA. As a judge, I think Hakuho is likely to be one of the more observant judges that would go around in sumo. Certainly he's one of the only ones who has called a mono-e as a sumo himself at the side of the dojo many years ago. He called he had the bravery to call the Gyoji's decision as incorrect, put his hand up and called for a mono-e, which is any of the sumo who are waiting at the dojo, that is their privilege and right to call a mono-e, but they very rarely do, as the Shimpan, the judges are usually on top of that. But I think he would make a very good Shimpan, and unfortunately he's going to be quite damaged by this because he has been, moulding Hokuseiho for many years from high school and convinced him to come to sumo, and even convinced him to come back when he quit at one stage. So maybe a bit of time will change his outlook as well. Anyway, a little bit of sad news. Hopefully we will get some good news over the next few weeks. The Banzuke comes out shortly, and we will go through that and we'll have a look at who's going to be where for March. Very unusual Banzuke. We've got a lot of people from Magashira 1 down to Magashira 5 or 6 failed quite badly in January, so there'll be some big over promotions, maybe some under demotions, and some changes in the Sanyaku ranks after our Komusubi failed and our Magashira 1 did well, Wakamoto Haru. So I would think we will see him back up in Sekiwake or at the very least Komusubi, but I would dare say he'll end up at Sekiwake. But we'll talk more about that in the coming week. Anyway, that's it for this episode on Scandals. Not a great news, and I don't normally cover things outside the ring, but this one was quite serious and certainly needed some attention. So that's it, and I'll talk to you at the next episode. Hakuho listeners, let's learn sumo.